Welcome to the White Knight Theater. I hope you can distinguish the distractions and forget all the performative aspects, focusing instead on the evidence that the defense cannot refute. He is a murderer, even if he was once the top football player. If the glove does not fit, you must acquit him. As the jury is about to deliberate, the trial is nearing its end, and people's emotions are running high. What kind of verdict will the jurors ultimately reach? Can a simple mindset like better to let 1,000 go than to wrong one influence the jury? On the day of the verdict, what was the true scene across the United States? Under the watchful eyes of the public, Judge Ito slowly rose to his feet and gave the jury their final instructions. This is also the stipulation of American law for juries. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Ito clearly read the instructions twice. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Before you begin your final deliberations, I want to remind you not to be influenced by the following factors: your emotions, sympathy, passion, prejudice, or public opinion and attitudes. I believe both the prosecution and defense genuinely want you to carefully consider all the evidence and apply the law reasonably. In the United States, there's an unwritten convention that for every week a trial lasts, the jury's deliberation time will increase proportionally by 1 day. The formal trial of Simpson lasted over 38 weeks. Therefore, after Judge Lance Ito announced that the case would be submitted to the jury for their verdict, everyone assumed they might need up to 4 to 5 weeks to reach consensus. Just as the dream team of lawyers wanted to relax and cope with the anxiety of waiting for the verdict, new news came in. Hey, this is Johnny Cochran. I'm calling you Bailey. Didn't we agree that everyone would take a break and wait for the result calmly? What's the verdict? They've reached a unanimous decision. Cooks, I'll be right back. After 267 days, with 1,105 pieces of evidence, 133 witnesses, and over 45,000 pages of trial transcripts, the 12 jurors unanimously agreed on the verdict after only 3.5 hours of deliberation. O.J. Simpson in prison quickly learned of this news, but he appeared very shouty in a phone call with Jomi. Hey guys, if I'm found guilty, I don't want to see you anymore. Don't visit me because your lives are still moving forward while I'm stuck, never changing. So what's there to talk about? On October 3rd, 1995, at 10 a.m. Pacific time, when Judge Lance Ito called out the jury to announce the final verdict of O.J. Simpson, time stood still. President Clinton declared a pause in state affairs. Secretary of State Baker postponed his speech. The Chicago Stock Exchange halted trading. Flights at Los Angeles Airport were delayed, and long-distance phone lines fell silent. City centers were deserted, with only fully armed police on the streets. Office buildings, restaurants, cafes, and convenience stores were empty. No matter where they were or what they were doing, one thing was certain. 400 million Americans, more than half of the population, stopped what they were doing and turned to the nearest screen or gathered around radios to wait for the final verdict. The media reported that in the 10 minutes before and after the verdict, almost all activities in the United States came to a halt. People stopped working, attending classes, making phone calls, and even using the restroom, all to listen to the Simpson verdict. At Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta, Delta Airlines flights were delayed because everyone was watching TV. An ill-timed staff member who urged passengers to board during the critical moment of the verdict was shouted down by over 100 passengers. In a Miami bank, the tellers stopped counting money, and a long queue suddenly disappeared. We now welcome back all the jurors and alternate jurors. Mr. Simpson, please stand up and face the jury. For this California case, number BA 97211, the people versus O.J. Simpson, we, the jury, announce our verdict on the charges listed under Penal Code Section 187A. The defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, is not guilty. Okay, you can go home. I firmly believe that today is a failure for our country. Justice has not been served. This is the end. This trial is destined to be recorded in the history of Los Angeles and even the entire United States as a racial and cultural milestone. The jubilation of African Americans and the despair of white Americans formed a stark contrast, highlighting the deep rift between the two largest racial groups in the United States, which seems irreparable. Many media outlets have deeply tracked this social issue. Last July, 63% of whites believed Simpson was guilty, while 65% of African Americans believed he was not guilty. Now, more than a year later, with all the evidence presented, 77% of whites believe Simpson is guilty, while 72% of African Americans believe he is not guilty. The divide between African Americans and whites has become even more pronounced. Prosecutors and defense attorneys held separate press conferences. For both sides, who unlocked different outcomes, the emotions and atmosphere were completely different. If there is anything that has motivated me to persist through the entire trial of this case, it is the belief that one day I can tell the Goldman family that I realized he escaped the law. I'm honored to be a little more calm. Do not allow me to cry. OJ, you cannot escape the law. You're crazy. Prosecutor Darden choked up several times on stage and left in a daze without completing his final remarks. As an African American, he paid a huge price for going against his own community, yet he failed to secure a guilty verdict. On the other side, for Johnny Cochran's legal team and O.J. Simpson, this was an unquestionable victory, a hard-fought battle. I reiterate that this case is over. None of us condone murder, and we empathize with the pain suffered by the families of the victims. You did not show any joy in front of the camera. As a lawyer, he knew that perhaps in the sense of the trial he had won. But with 2 murders unsolved and no suspect identified, this was not an easy thing for anyone who cared about justice. He could not and dared not show joy. On the other side, O.J. Simpson's eldest son, Jason Simpson, was extremely excited. Here, I represent my father, O.J. Simpson, to make this statement. The nightmare that began on June 12, 1994, has finally ended. I will make finding the murderer my life's main goal, to seek out the person or persons who killed Nicole and Mr. Goldman. I am willing to pay any price to find the murderer and not let him go unpunished. In O.J. Simpson's mansion, Shapiro, who had already withdrawn from the case, responded in a different way. Thank you all. Thank you for your continuous support and trust. Let's have a drink together. I don't seem to see Shapiro. Hasn't he arrived yet? He's on TV. Mr. Bobbitt, you said from the beginning that race would not be a decisive factor in this case, and that you would not play the race card. However, the defense team clearly did play the race card. What do you have to say about that? Bob Blattner, my personal attitude has never changed. I have always insisted that race should not be the focus of the case, which is where my disagreement lies with others. In the end, as you can see, they not only played the race card, but they turned it from the bottom of the deck to the top. Would you work with Johnny Cochran again? No. How about with F. Lee Bailey? No. Say one more thing to him. Everyone look this way. I'll count down from 3, 2, 1, and we'll say it together. OG 3, 2, 1, red flag. The lead defense attorney at the beginning of the case, Shapiro, publicly declared on TV that he had cut ties with F. Lee Bailey, becoming a small yet meaningful microcosm of all the outcomes in the Simpson case. Many people involved in this case, whether lawyers, prosecutors, witnesses, or jurors, had their lives and relationships changed because of it. And as the protagonist of this trial of the century, O.J. Simpson's life was completely altered. After the trial, because the majority of white people, especially the wealthy, believed Simpson was guilty, he had a hard time living in his community. He wasn't short of money, but he had no friends. His former friends now united to distance themselves from him. The community club kicked him out, and neighbors no longer greeted him when they saw him face to face. Some even pointed at him and loudly demanded that he move away. On Thanksgiving in 1995, O.J. Simpson stood on the podium at a community sale, wearing a slightly worn casual hoodie, a stark contrast to his elite image in court. For the past 30 years, I have treated every person I've come into contact with in any situation with the utmost patience and kindness. I wouldn't do to others what I wouldn't want for myself. I've always replied to anyone who wrote to me and contributed to any charity that reached out. Now, all I ask is that you treat me as kindly as I've treated you. I swear to that I did not commit those crimes. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you, OG. Simpson's speech had no effect. Wherever he appeared, a group of people would gather nearby to oppose and curse him. People were extremely angry that he had escaped the murder charges. Simpson, who once benefited from racism, had now become a victim of it. Eventually, O.J. Simpson chose to return to the black community and embrace his own people. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm just getting back now. Maybe I shouldn't have left in the first place. Don't say that. You'll always be our buddy. Yeah, those white trash framed you. Right here, O.J. Simpson also received a rap song written for him, with lyrics about the fate of a hero in the trial of the century. OG, the pandemic told us what the situation would be. Everyone craves the realm of freedom. Nice hear you rose to me, product OG, watch game a man, was B, and job, Has the Simpson case ended? No. A year later, O.J. Simpson once again stood in the dock for the murder of Nicole and Goldman. The victims' families in the Simpson case filed a civil lawsuit. We hope there's a courtroom where someone can say to Simpson, "You're guilty." The speaker was the father of the male victim, Goldman. Will the outcome of this trial be different? Will the story end here once and for all?